It's time to go through and tell you which running backs to start in week 3 and which ones you should be sitting. We'll go through each matchup. Drop a like if you enjoy the video format and you find this helpful. Let's start with the Thursday night game, Miami versus Buffalo. In terms of Vegas lines and implied total points for both of these teams, Buffalo, of course, has a green Vegas light this week because they are projected to score a lot of points against this Miami Dolphins defense. Because of that, James Cook is a must start. He is going to be in the A tier now because he deserves it. He's the running back 1 in fantasy football through 2 weeks. And while it's not going to be this good for the entire season, he is going to be a very startable, probably must-start option for the rest of the year. And so he is going to be in the A tier where he belongs at this point. And then Ray Davis, we're going to have as a sit. Still don't feel comfortable starting a second running back there in Buffalo quite yet. You still have Ty Johnson there, and he comes in and takes a little bit of that workload as well. And so Ray Davis is going to be a sit for us. It's a good matchup for James Cook in this one. And then on the Miami side of the ball, we're going to have Devon Achane in the A tier as well as Ollie Gordon is going to be a sit for us in the I tier. Devon Achane so far looks great. Even though the offense there has been abysmal, Devon Achane so far this year has had games of 16 and 26. And so you're looking at only 7 and 11 carries through the first 2 games, but 4 targets and 10 targets in the game against New England. It's a tough matchup for Devon Achane, but again, he's somebody that realistically, when you're looking at his production, the running back 5 through 2 weeks of fantasy football, you're almost always going to start. So even though the Vegas line's red, the matchup is good. The Bills defense historically has given up a lot of points to running backs when we're using a combination of last year's data and this year's data. And so with Achane, he's a must start in the A tier, Ollie Gordon in the I tier. This matchup for Thursday night, probably a good one for Bills, not so great for the Dolphins.
Got 2 really solid starting running backs in the Atlanta and Carolina game that we're very comfortable with. Obviously, Bijan Robinson, S tier. He looks like one of the best running backs just straight up in the NFL. And Tyler Algier backing him up. Algier actually had like 15 points against Minnesota in week 2. I will say a good chunk of that came in the fourth quarter towards the end of the game when they were just trying to maintain that lead. And Bijan had done all the work that he needed to. So we are going to have Algier in the F tier. He's kind of a riser this week, but not a guy that we're comfortable starting. It is, again, going to be one of the friendlier matchups against Carolina's run defense, which is one of the worst in the league. Chuba Hubbard, going to be a must-start in the C tier this week. Doesn't have the ceiling that some of those elite-level guys, elite-level running backs across the league have, but he's one of the few true bell cow running backs that, again, isn't like a Tony Pollard-esque running back where you're like, oh, man, his floor is really low. He's actually really solid. He's going to get good enough receiving volume where his floor is kind of raised, and you're very comfortable starting Chuba every single week. Rico Dowdle behind him. Got some usage with goal line carries last week, actually, but his snap share was very, very limited. He only had like 29% snap share, which was actually a tick down from what he had week 1 against Jacksonville. I think Rico's kind of just going to settle into a true backup behind Chuba and would be a lot more relevant if he were to ever go down with injury. But Rico's not a guy that we're comfortable starting this week either, and he'll be in the H tier for us.
All right, moving down to the Green Bay-Cleveland game. This one's very interesting from a running back perspective for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
First of all, on the Green Bay side of the ball, this is a tough matchup for the Green Bay Packers and for Josh Jacobs, because in the first 2 weeks, what you've seen from this Cleveland Browns running defense is that Derrick Henry had 2.3 points there last week. And in week 1, you had Chase Brown have 13.1, only salvaged his day because of a touchdown. In terms of efficiency against this defense, 2.05 yards per carry for Chase Brown in week 1. In week 2, 2.09 yards per carry for Derrick Henry. This is
the best run defense in the NFL right now.
Now, Chase Brown in week 1 demonstrates why I think you still have to start Josh Jacobs in your flex spot this week is because he's going to score a touchdown. Yep. And when he does, he's going to have 10 points. And 10 points, is probably better than most of your other flex upside options. If you want to sit Jacobs, I guess I don't blame you, but we're going to label him as a start even with the very tough matchup. Obviously, Chris Brooks is nothing there. Josh Jacobs in the A tier for this week. Now, moving down to the Cleveland side of the ball, the reason this is also an interesting matchup is because you have the running back room and the rotation kind of in flux as you have Quinshon Judkins working back into that offense. Also, you've looked at the Green Bay defense this year. It's been one of the best defenses in the NFL. My new Flock League defense, the missing piece, I'm now going to go on a 10-game or 12-game winning streak. We'll see. And so Quinshon, even though he is going to be the running back 1 there this week, in our opinion, he's already listed on the depth chart. You saw him play very well last week in limited sample size. He is going to be a meh for us this week because, again, you do still have Jerome Ford and Dylan Sampson. Dylan Sampson still is, he had 10 points there last week, so he still is in the mix as the receiving back. And we think that's going to keep going moving forward. But you can't start him. You can't start Jerome Ford. Quinshon we're going to have in the D tier. Again, he's a mess start, but he's definitely somebody that if you're like Nathan and you had a terrible middle of the draft and you have to start him, you're going to. I have literally no room to talk, so you can make fun of me anytime you want, dude. I've got a worse record than you. Jerome Ford in the G tier is a sit for us, and Dylan Sampson in the G tier also a sit for us. Again, a matchup where you have some good running backs, but it's a weird situation because the defenses are both very good and because the Cleveland running back room right now is still figuring itself out.
So Houston and Jacksonville, another interdivisional matchup. Houston has had a really solid defense, has kind of kept the LA Rams and Baker and the Tampa Bay Bucks at bay in the first 2 weeks of the season, even though they've lost both those games. They really kept both those offenses from being like ultra explosive on the day. I will say, though, Travis Etienne is a must-start at this point with the double digits that he's been putting up to start the season. The unquestioned bell cow there, and yes, he is the unquestioned bell cow with Bashal Tutin as the running back two there, who has essentially just absorbed all of Tank Bigsby's usage. So while the volume for Tutin increased, I don't think that necessarily means he's going to be eating into Etienne's really majority usage in that offense for the foreseeable future. Tutin did have a good day, though. He had a receiving touchdown. He looked pretty solid in the opportunities that he got. So we are going to list Tutin as a meh in the F tier. Like, if you have to flex Tutin because, hey, Aaron Jones just went down with an injury, he's on IR, and you don't have a ton of depth and you have to flex a guy like Tutin, it'll be okay. You just understand that you're going to have a much lower floor with a guy like Tutin, which was why we have him in the F tier here. On the flip side, you do have Nick Chubb in the F tier as well, close to Tutin. I would give the nod to Chubb over a guy like Bashal Tutin because he is the running back one there. The other issue with Chubb is he's just straight up inefficient. He does not look good in that offense. That offense as a whole actually does not look nearly as explosive and consistent as it has been in years past with Stroud and Nico. With Nick Chubb, he really salvaged his day with that touchdown that he got in the fourth quarter, which was a great breakaway run. But again, you take that away and the volume is not enough. He only had 12 carries. He had 13 carries against the Rams. This is not consistent and good enough volume for us to say like, hey, you absolutely have to start this guy because he's not really playing a bell cow role, even though he's the running back one there. So meh for Nick Chubb. And then behind him, again, Woody Marks had an explosive play or two in that game. His snap share is too low for us to be comfortable starting him anytime soon. He'll be in the H tier.
All right, moving to the Cincinnati and Minnesota game. Chase Brown is going to be still a start for us. We're going to place him in the C tier, and Samaje Perine. We are not going to rank Taj Brooks. We're not going to rank either. For the Cincinnati group, I mean, the Minnesota run defense is tough. This is a Brian Flores defense that does very well against running backs. Last year, they allowed the second least amount of points to running backs, and so far this year, they've done pretty well also. Obviously, they've played Bijan, and that kind of, didn't help, but regardless, with Chase Brown, you got to start him this week, I think. And again, we've got him in the C tier for this week. On the other side of the ball, you have Aaron Jones going down on IR. For the next 4 weeks at least, Jordan Mason is going to be the lead back there. Now, in the same offense, you have a big change as you have J.J. McCarthy going down and you have Carson Wentz stepping in. My guess here is that they're going to lean pretty heavily from a volume standpoint on Jordan Mason. He is now going to move up to the C tier with guys like Chase Brown and Chuba Hubbard, and he is a must-start for us while Aaron Jones is out and while J.J. McCarthy is out as well. J.J. McCarthy is going to use his legs more than Carson Wentz will, and so you're going to see a little bit of a schematic change there. Not to mention, I just think they're going to rely on trying to run the ball down teams' throats more, and so I think you're going to see Jordan Mason be a must-start guy. Cam Akers moves into the running back 2 role there. I don't think that Cam Akers is somebody you want to start, and so he is going to be a sit for us. We're not even really picking him up on waivers yet, but it will be interesting to see, at least in this Minnesota game, how they handle snaps between Jordan Mason and whoever the running back 2 ends up being. It looks like it's going to be Cam Akers, but not ranked for him. So again, both the starting running backs in this game will go in the C tier, and both the running back 2s in this game will not be ranked on our tier rankings.
So next matchup we have is Pittsburgh and New England. A couple of running backs here that are worth mentioning on the New England side. Obviously, Ramondre Stevenson and Travion Henderson. The big name being Henderson. He's kind of maintained that 30-35% snap share through 2 weeks. We thought that would incrementally increase. At least through the first 2 weeks, it is not. So unfortunately, while we really like Henderson, the talent, until that volume goes up to a point where he is truly getting the nod over Ramondre and actually the true running back 1 there, we can only put him as high as the F tier at this point, and Ramondre is going to have to be in the B tier. Both of them are going to be mez because even with Ramondre getting like 65% snap share over the first 2 weeks of the season, 11 carries against Miami, 5 targets, 7 carries against Vegas, 3 targets. Like that's, again, very Nick Chubb-esque where it's like, yeah, technically he's the running back 1 there, but are you really happy about starting Ramondre Stevenson every single week? What's his floor? It's his floor is a 4-point game against Vegas versus his upside being, 20 plus, which he had against Miami. Pittsburgh going to be a tougher matchup. Obviously, they've been kind of shaky defensively the first 2 weeks of the season, but I would expect Pittsburgh to kind of figure it out. They do have a lot of talent on the defensive side of the ball, and of all the teams to figure it out against in terms of the run game, it would be probably Ramondre if he's going to be the lead back there. And then on the flip side, you've got Jaylen Warren, who's the unquestioned running back one there in Pittsburgh. He's looked really solid with actually less snap share than Ramondre Stevenson gets for New England, but he's just more efficient and more effective with his opportunity. 11 and 14 carries for the first 2 weeks, 13 and 17 points. He gets some receiving usage as well. He had no touchdowns against Seattle in week 2, and he still had 17 points. So that's really encouraging for a guy like Jaylen Warren. And I think at this point, Kenneth Gainwell, when you're talking about relevant touches on the field, where are those touches and opportunities happening? Like Jaylen Warren is getting the majority of those relevant opportunities, and Caleb Johnson is just a complete non-factor. So we will have Jaylen Warren ranked in the C tier this week and Kenneth Gainwell in the G tier as a sit. Definitely want to start or flex Jaylen Warren this week.
All right, moving on to the Los Angeles Rams and Philadelphia Eagles matchup this week. We've got Kyren Williams on the Los Angeles side of the ball. Still a start. Kyren Williams is still a start. In my opinion, Blake Corum's still a sit. Look, they're still going to go for a 65-35 split there, and so in my opinion, Blake Corum is not going to be relevant and a starter in fantasy football until he scores touchdowns, and you just don't know on which weeks that's going to happen. Last week, as it so happened, the 2 or 3 drives that Blake Corum was assigned to, they were longer drives. They got into the red zone one of the times he got in. And Blake Corum did look good, and you can't shy away from that. Kyren got down to the 1-yard line. He had 2 big runs at the end of the game, and then they ran the clock out. He could have had another touchdown there. And again, it just so happened that when Kyren was off the field is when they ended up getting into the red zone. Didn't really have anything to do with Kyren, more so just how it kind of played out. And so not super worried about Kyren. We're going to put him in the B tier. Blake Corum, again, can't necessarily start him until he's going to score touchdowns pretty consistently. I don't think he's going to be like a David Montgomery there in that offense, and so that's why I'm not comfortable starting him. But he is in the H tier. We are going to rank him this week and move him up our rankings a little bit. Philadelphia, we got Saquon Barkley, of course, in the S tier. And then A.J. Dillon, somebody that we're not going to rank this week, somebody we're going to put in the I tier, actually, and somebody that we're not going to start this week. In terms of the matchup, obviously Kyren has the tougher matchup here against the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles allowed the least amount of points last year to running backs in fantasy football. However, I do still think you have to start Kyren. I'm starting Kyren. Most of us don't have the luxury of sitting Kyren Williams, but if you're in a more shallow league, a 10-team league, maybe you can sit Kyren Williams for somebody else, and so we'll take advantage of that. It is a tough matchup for Kyren, but we're going to have him and Saquon both as starts this week, Blake Corum and A.J. Dillon both as sits in this matchup. That should be a pretty good one.
Then you got the Jets taking on Tampa. It's looking like Justin Fields is not going to clear concussion protocol, and you'll have Tyrod Taylor at the helm for the Jets, so I do think that means it's going to be wheels up for Breece Hall. They're going to try to stay competitive in this game by running the ball, slowing the game down so that the Bucs can't capitalize on a ton of explosive plays and opportunities there. They'll try to keep the ball out of their hands as much as they can. So Breece, I think, is going to get a ton of touches in this game. We have him in the B tier as a must start. Braylon Allen behind him is really only going to be relevant if Breece Hall ever goes down with an injury. Every once in a while, he'll get a red zone carry. Every once in a while, he'll get a short line or short yardage goal line carry and have a touchdown. Everyone will be like, oh, Braylon Allen. And in reality, you can't start this guy. We've got him in the H tier this week. And then Bucky Irving on the flip side had a solid day against Houston, which was a really tough defense. It's going to be a tough defense against the Jets as well. But there have been productive running backs, honestly, this season going up against New York. So I think Bucky's going to be totally fine. He's had 14 and 18 points the first 2 weeks of the season. I do want to note and at least highlight Rachaad White, though, because while we do have Bucky Irving ranked here in the A tier, Rachaad White is going to be in the F tier. He's moved up quite a bit because he had a good day, and I don't think it was a fluky good day either. I am going to have him as a sit this week because I would like to see it more, and I don't really trust this consistent production over the course of multiple weeks. But he did have 10 carries compared to the 2 that he got in Atlanta, and these weren't like garbage time, nothing burger carries. These were like the game was on the line. Tampa was down. They needed to score a touchdown to win the game, and they gave the ball to Rachaad White, and they were giving him carries in the fourth quarter. So that does matter. You just aren't going to have, again, like you're not going to be comfortable starting a guy like Rachaad White against the Jets this week in a game that I don't necessarily expect to be ultra competitive without Justin Fields. So that'll be interesting to monitor, I think, long term. Just wanted to mention him F tier. We are still going to have him as a sit this week.
Yeah, I would maybe say he's a meh, but I'm borderline comfortable starting him at this point, just depending on what this week looks like. He looked good last week, honestly. Yeah. All right, Indianapolis, Tennessee. Jonathan Taylor. Must start, of course. You have to start Jonathan Taylor. We have him in the A tier of our rankings. The running back 2 in Indy is DJ Giddens, who we do not have ranked. It's a mediocre matchup for both of these teams from a run defense standpoint. From a Vegas standpoint, obviously the Colts light is going to be better. Yellow light for Vegas for the Colts and red light for the Titans against the Colts, not implying a ton of points. And that kind of does put some doubt on Tony Pollard. We are going to have him in that C tier, and for the most part, everybody in the C tier is a start. And so we're going to say to start Tony Pollard. Again, I'm going to kind of use the same, qualifier that I've used for some of the other tougher starts this week on guys that are bell cows in this league. This is not a great start if you have other guys to start ahead of him. Tony Pollard has really just not been efficient as a bell cow. He's not found the end zone a lot as a bell cow. And realistically, I don't love their chances of scoring a lot of points in this game. I do think he has touchdown upside, though, and I think that's why you probably have to flex him. We're going to put him as a start. Again, you can kind of make your own decision there. Julius Chestnut, not even ranked on here. We're not going to rank him. But again, mediocre matches for both these teams. Obviously, we feel much better about Jonathan Taylor in this matchup than we do feel about Tony Pollard, who has struggled so far with a very heavy workload.
Then we got Vegas and Washington. Ashton Jeanty, even though he started his rookie season a little bit slow, there's no one behind him that's going to be getting a ton of work or anything like that. 19 attempts against New England in week 1, 11 attempts against the Chargers in week 2, and a game where they really were kind of just forced to pass the ball a lot because they were down for a lot of that game. I think Jeanty is going to continue to just get better as time goes on. Matchup against Washington where Jaden Daniels might be missing time or miss that game. So we'll see what happens there. It might be a slower game where maybe they want to depend on the run a little bit after Geno had a 3-pick performance against the Chargers. They want to slow things down a bit. So going to go must start with Ashton Jeanty in the B tier, Zamir White. In the I tier, not someone that you're looking to start again unless there's an injury long term. Washington on the flip side, you've got Krosky Merritt, who is effectively the running back 1 there. We are going to list him as a meh in the D tier this week. And the reason being, Krosky Merritt, when you're looking at his usage again alongside Austin Eckler, he literally had 22% snap share against Green Bay. It went down from his usage against the Giants. And again, that was against Green Bay. So we want to give him a little bit of a break there. But I will say against Vegas, you just saw in week 2, Vegas completely shut down Amari Hampton and cost Avery the week. Like, Vegas has a pretty good run defense, it's looking like. So for a guy like Krosky Merritt, who's not nearly as talented as a guy like Hampton, who's actually a bell cow in his offense, I don't really know what we can expect from Krosky Merritt. You can expect the upside and the ceiling if he gets a touchdown or something like that. But I think Krosky Merritt's floor this week is very, very low, like as low as it was against Green Bay in week 2. So I would be cautious with him. And I would also be more than cautious with McNichols and Rodriguez. I think one of the biggest fallacies we can fall for at this point in the season is, hey, Austin Eckler goes down with an injury, a running back 2 and a committee backfield goes down with an injury. The next man up, the next running back 2 up is going to do the exact same thing. Austin Eckler was already an ugly start, an ugly flex option. Jeremy McNichols was the running back 3 before Eckler went down with the injury for a reason. It's not going to be any prettier. It's not going to be any better. So we're going to have McNichols in the G tier this week as a sit until we see him produce at a consistent level and get better receiving usage. And then Chris Rodriguez is going to be a sit in the I tier this week as well.
A lot of you guys are watching for this matchup here, and so I'm going to give you my best estimate of what I think you should do with these guys in this matchup. J.K. Dobbins, of course, is a start. On the Denver side of the ball, it's a little bit less murky. It's a tough matchup for Denver, but if you're starting a running back in this Denver Broncos offense, it is J.K. Dobbins until we see an increased workload for R.J. Harvey, who is a sit for us in terms of where we're ranking these guys. Dobbins in the C tier, again, mostly all starts in that C tier. And then in the G tier, we'll have R.J. Harvey. R.J. Harvey is a sit for us. You cannot start R.J. Harvey until he gets a higher percentage of snaps there. Utilization for R.J. Harvey so far on a snap percentage basis is 29 and 33%. He's gotten about 5 attempts per game, 1 target per game, and that seems like what they're comfortable giving him, 7 and 3 points in these games. Really, outside of the one big run he had in week 1, you haven't really seen anything special from R.J. Harvey. And so he's not somebody that you can plug in your fantasy lineup and feel good about. And so C tier for Dobbins, G tier for Harvey. The Los Angeles side of the ball. Are you starting Omar? What are you doing with Amari and Hampton? Are you going to start Hampton? I understand if you want to put him as a meh because he's in the D tier. He's with Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, who's a meh. He's with Ramondre Stevenson, who's a meh. He's with Quinshon Judkins, who's a meh. I am going to say to start Omarion Hampton still. I personally am still starting Omarion Hampton. I think that it's not all that surprising against Max Crosby and the Raiders and then the Kansas City Chiefs run defense that Omarion Hampton, who cannot get to the line of scrimmage without being touched, I don't think it's all that surprising that a rookie in those two tough matchups has struggled so far. And historically, what you see with rookie running backs is they do tend to struggle in the first couple weeks of the season. And then most of the very good prospects, which I consider Hampton a very good prospect, a very good running back, tend to do better later in the season. I may be crazy. I may end up regretting it. My guess is Hampton this week. I'm not overreacting to the Najee stuff. I'm going Hampton as a start this week. And I still am going to have Najee Harris as a sit. And maybe I'll look stupid for this. But from a production standpoint, last week what you saw, after Hampton got benched for, by the way, a fumble that was not his fault. Did you ever see the video of that? Of the Hampton fumble? Yeah. Whose fault was that? I mean, not Hampton's, right? He didn't bobble the handoff. Yeah. He was met in the backfield during the handoff. Like, what do you do about that if you're Hampton? Yeah. Well, they benched him for it. They're ruining my boy. Najee, even with a double the snap share from week 1 to week 2, 18 to 34%. You see, have him go from 2 to 6.8 points. You can't start that. You can't start that. He had 2 targets and for 20 yards or 2 receptions, but they were checkdowns at the end of the game. So if you're paying attention, you know that Hampton could get those next game. It wasn't necessarily a Najee-specific thing. And so, in my opinion, I still think Hampton, who, by the way, from a snap share standpoint, from a utilization standpoint, this still does speak volumes, that Hampton got 62% of the snaps in week 2, and Harris got 34. Hampton's still the lead back. I'm going to say start Hampton. I'm going to say sit Najee Harris. I don't know what you think about that, but that's what everybody's going to be asking us about.
No,
so.
I'm with you there.
Okay.
I'm on the same page.
Okay.
New Orleans and Seattle is going to be an interesting matchup as well, honestly, just because of the Seattle side. I want to touch on Kamara, though, because this is the easiest part. Kamara must start B tier. I think you're kind of seeing his floor right now. He's still scoring double digits first 2 weeks of the season with Rattler throwing the ball a ton. He's going to be fine. Kendry Miller, we don't even have ranked. You're not starting any running back ever in New Orleans offense beyond Alvin Kamara. And in terms of the matchups, the lights there, it's neutral for the matchup in offense lights, and then red for Vegas, because again, we kind of expect this to be a lower-ish scoring game for New Orleans because they're just going to be down a lot. But Seattle, you've got Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker, who we both have ranked in the D's tier. Here's what I'm going to do, though. I'm going to have Kenneth Walker listed as a start, and I'm going to have Zach Charbonnet listed as a meh. I have a reason for this. The reason being, number one, if we're just being honest with ourselves, if you guys watching are being honest with yourself, who are you more optimistic is going to have a big game week in and week out when both of these guys are healthy heading into a game? Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. Which one are you happier about starting in terms of upside? It's Kenneth Walker. It's not even a question. Like that's just, when I ask myself that question, I'm like, yeah, both these guys are healthy. I'm going to give the nod to Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker's snap share is very inferior to Zach Charbonnet's. But what ends up happening and what we've seen in the first 2 weeks is they're getting the same amount of volume on the ground. And Kenneth Walker he has more explosive upside, and Zach Charbonnet gets legitimately no receiving usage or receiving opportunity whatsoever. Kenneth Walker's isn't pretty either, but at least it exists. Charbonnet's just doesn't. So again, if I'm looking at flexing one of these guys, while Kenneth Walker is healthy, I'm going to give the nod to him because I do think his ceiling and his upside is higher, and both of these guys have shown you what their floor is, and it's the same. So I'm gonna go with Walker this week. I'll give the nod to him, but they are going to be in the same tier because, again, they're splitting a backfield, and Charbonnet does get the snap share nod. So I'll go meh with Zach Charbonnet.
All right, the Dallas-Chicago matchup. Javonte Williams up to the B tier this week. You got to start him every single week. He looks like one of the best picks in fantasy football right now through the first couple weeks of the season. B tier for Javonte's start. It's also a good matchup for Javonte. Chicago last year was not very good against running backs, and so far this year, we'll see how they do, but looks like more of the same. Miles Sanders in the I tier is a sit for us. We're not starting any other running back in that backfield just yet. The implied Vegas line there is yellow for Dallas, while on the Chicago side of the ball, the implied total points light is actually green. It should project to be a fairly high-scoring game here. DeAndre Swift is somebody who we're going to put in the C tier. He is also a start for us. We still think Swifty, with all the volume he's getting, is going to be somebody you've got to start every week. So he is a start in the C tier. Kyle Monangai is not ranked for us. He is somebody you are sitting. You cannot start the running back 2 there. Although you did see Kyle Monangai, from a usage standpoint last week, take a step in the right direction for being viable from 13% snap share in week 1 to 41% snap share in week 2. And so with Monangai, you don't feel comfortable starting him yet. But in this game, you're going with the starting running backs in Javonte Williams and DeAndre Swift as starts.
All right, so Arizona versus San Francisco. We got James Conner and CMC, the true running back ones in their respective offenses. We are going to have, again, CMC S tier. As long as he's healthy, he will remain in that S tier. That offense is funneled through him basically exclusively, with Purdy out, Kittle out, Ayuk out. It's fun to watch. Nice to see him go crazy. And this will be a solid matchup against Arizona, who's just kind of neutral across the board. They're not going to be like super lockdown, and they're going to allow production to some of these premier level assets like CMC. James Conner will be in the C tier. He is the running back 1 there, but Benson has been getting a lot more usage than he did last season. Conner's snap share kind of limited to like 55 to 65% so far over the last 2 weeks, 14 and 12 points respectively against New Orleans and Carolina. Those were pretty easy matchups for Conner, honestly, and he only had 12 and 11 carries in both of those games. And again, those are games where like you do want to be running the ball because they got the lead pretty early in those games. So I am a little bit like cautious with James Conner. You're obviously starting James Conner, but in terms of his upside and his outlook long term, I'm like, yeah, I'm a little bit concerned, honestly. If you're not going to be able to drop a ton of production against New Orleans and Carolina, what are you going to do against tougher matchups with like San Francisco? So that's why he's going to be in the C tier. And then Trey Benson, I do want to mention here, I am still going to list Benson as a sit this week because while his snap share and opportunity is going up, it's nothing to write home about yet where like, hey, I really want to be flexing Trey Benson. Like, I don't feel good about that. He has had 8-point games against New Orleans and Carolina where the usage like flips. He had 8 carries and 1 target against New Orleans, only 3 carries and 6 targets against Carolina. So like, what type of Trey Benson are we going to see this week? He's not really getting a ton of red zone usage or opportunity yet. I do expect that to maybe increase down the line, but at the moment we're going to have him in the F tier listed as a sit.
This is the ugliest running back game of the week by far. We're going to talk about Kansas City first. Isaiah Pacheco, the only reason I have him as a meh and not a sit, because when you're looking at Pacheco so far this season, I mean, it is nothing short of bad. Against Philly, obviously 2.2 yards per carry, 4 points in week 1, 4 points in week 2. You can't start that. He's a running back 51 through 2 weeks. But he's playing the Giants this week. It is a good matchup for running backs for the Kansas City Chiefs. The problem is, which running back is it a good matchup for? Kareem Hunt, so far, also 4 points each game. I personally, I don't know about you, I don't want to take 4 points from a Kansas City running back and put it in my lineup. I'm going to put Kareem Hunt as a sit, and I'll put Pacheco as a meh. I do think Pacheco has touchdown upside this week, and that's in particular why I'm putting him on here in the F tier. So F tier for Isaiah Pacheco, G tier for Kareem Hunt. Good matchup for the Chiefs. The Giants have a split backfield where you've got one guy taking over the other guy in terms of the running back 1, and it's a bad matchup. It's a bad matchup. The Kansas City Chiefs, look, we've seen what they do to running backs. It's not great. So Scatterboo in this matchup, I'm going to put both these guys as mess. I'll let you decide. My inclination is to say meh for Scatterboo and sit for Tracy, but Tracy still is getting a lot of receiving work there. He had 5 targets in the last game as well. And so because of that, I think that Scatterboo does look like, from a volume standpoint on the ground, the guy that's going to have the touchdown upside. Tracy looks like he's got the receiving upside. You really don't know which way this backfield's going to go. We have them ranked in the same tier, both in the F tier, and a very tough matchup. I think these guys are both very shaky starts for this week, and if you can afford to start no running backs in this game, your fantasy team's in a good spot, and I would just avoid this game altogether for running backs.
So the matchup of the week, Monday night, this is going to be a blast, an absolute blast to watch. We got Detroit and Baltimore. Super excited for this one. Gibbs and Henry, S and A tier respectively. These guys are going to be great. They do have technically red matchups, but I will say both of these teams have allowed a good amount of production this season to running backs. You've seen Detroit obviously get blown out by Green Bay, and then in garbage time, Chicago actually had some decent production as well. Derrick Henry, I think, will have a much better game than he did against Cleveland. He'll be able to bounce back. But what I really want to talk about here is David Montgomery in the D tier. I'm going to list as a meh. The reason being, Baltimore, while they do have a solid defense overall, have allowed a decent amount of production to running backs the first 2 weeks of the season. 21 points to James Cook and 30 points combined between Dylan Sampson, Jerome Ford, and Quinshon Judkins last week in a game where they still needed to pass the ball a lot. Cleveland did, because they were down by like a ton of points. So I do think, though, in what we expect to be a high-scoring game where Baltimore allowed 40 points against Buffalo, Detroit has allowed, a decent amount of production to both of their opponents. I do expect this to be kind of a high-octane, probably more of a pass-heavy game. I could end up being totally wrong about that. But again, for a guy like David Montgomery, I'm a little more iffy this week, because I think Jahmyr Gibbs will have the explosive play opportunity, and Derrick Henry is really just, going to do Derrick Henry things. But as far as Detroit is concerned specifically, I think Amon-Ra kind of revitalizing his season after a really rough game week 1, looking really solid week 2, having 30-plus points. And Jameson Williams obviously finding his own as well with Sam Laporta. I'm just a little more iffy with David Montgomery this week when his snap share is so limited. They're going to have to get into the red zone and give him intentional carries if they want him to really pop off this week, and I just don't necessarily think with the matchup that's going to be the case. Justice Hill on the flip side against Baltimore will have him in the H tier. He's an absolute sit. You're not starting anyone past Derrick Henry.
All right, so there you go, every running back for this week. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you do, please drop a like, and also make sure you're subscribed. We do these every single week to make sure that your lineups are set for your week to win your fantasy football leagues. And also, changes happen throughout these rankings during the course of the week with injuries and updates and things like that. So if you'd like to stay up to date with how our rankings are shaping up, you can go make a free account on the site with code DOMAIN. You can access our rankings there. We're updating our rest of season ranks and our weekly ranks almost every day on the site. So you can create a free account. You can also plug your team into the My Teams tool, see where you're ranked at right now in your league, and kind of what your outlook looks like for the rest of this season. But appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you later.